I want to introduce our next speaker, which is Mario Molina. And he was born in the highlands of Guatemala, and that's where he really galvanized his love for the outdoors. He's an avid skier, snowboarder, outdoors person. He does all kinds of outdoor sports. And he's now executive director of Protect Our Winters. Before that, he was with Al Gore's climate project as one of the directors there. And then before that, he was with the Alliance for Climate Education. So he has been doing this work, for many years. And please welcome Mario.
Thank you so much. The irony is not lost on me that Guatemala does not have a lot of snowboarding or skiing. And so, I immigrated here about 10 years ago, and I must say it wasn't for economic opportunity or out of persecution. It was really for a love of mountains and a love of the large wild spaces that this country has to offer. And that's really what's motivated me for the work that we do at Protect Our Winters. At POW, I've found a community that cares about the activities and the places that I love as well. I did not learn to ice climb in Guatemala either. But what we've noticed in our community is that we are, in a way, canaries in the coal mine in terms of we're seeing the impacts of climate change firsthand. Ice falls that used to materialize on a yearly basis now don't. We're seeing shorter winters. Often, many of us here in Colorado remember the winter of 2017, 2018. And it's, there we go. And so I love Colorado. I love the United States. I love what it has to offer in terms of natural landscapes and the activities that we get to practice. But what we realize is that what brings us together at POW and what hopefully brings us together, a lot of us in this room, how many skiers are in the room? All right, fantastic. About half the room. Snowboarders? Great, awesome. So really 3/4 of us here have a shared experience in the mountains. Telemarketers? That's okay. Yeah. We all have a shared passion and a shared love for the mountains. And what we're working at Protect Our Winters is how do we turn that shared experience and that shared passion that we have into purposeful climate action. So when we found out about HB 1261 and the process of 1261, we were very early joined on in the coalition. And we mobilized both our base but also our athletes. A lot of the way that we have influence is we mobilize key athletes, elite athletes in the outdoor sports community to advocate for climate change policies. And so what we have here is a real gold, is the closest to the screen. She is a gold medalist in snowboarding. Gold Olympic medalist. Claire Gallagher just recently won, she's an ultra marathoner, and she just recently won the Western 100-mile race. And they went to testify in front of the legislature and on behalf of HB 1261. We are adding a voice that is usually not part of this conversation. In addition to that, we brought about 60 of our brand and corporate partners to either testify or write letters or call into their congresspeople on behalf of the outdoor industry. The outdoor industry in Colorado actually represents over 229,000 jobs, $9.7 billion in wages and salaries, and about $2 billion in tax revenue. So not only are we a cultural force, it is an economic force that has not yet been recognized as impactful in the climate conversation. And what we're doing is we're adding that voice to the climate conversation. So as we all know and we heard earlier today, that bill fortunately passed. It's the most aggressive climate legislation, a piece of climate legislation in the country right now, submitted by any state. But what we didn't really talk about was how hard it was to actually get that done. And despite the fact that Colorado has become incredibly progressive on a lot of these issues, there was a lot of opposition to this bill in the Colorado legislature. And I'd like to just highlight the reference book that Sonnenberg was using, Representative Sonnenberg was using during the hearing. So he was actually going back to this book and referencing it in order to oppose HB 1261. So it's one thing to say, yep, we're on track, etc., but we still have a lot of political opposition to climate action in the state, and especially at the state level. At the federal level, even though it's not being publicly said, there's only about 10 to 12 I'm trying not to be partisan. There's only about 12 Congress people who are actually still staunch deniers or totally opposed climate action. But the rhetoric hasn't changed much. And at the state level, that number is much higher. As we saw in Oregon when we had the walkout that blocked the carbon pricing legislation. So, the bill passed along party lines, definitely still passed along party lines. It went to a Colorado governor, to Governor Polis. It was signed. We were fortunate enough to be there when he signed it and in support of the bill. And we had a similar experience in Nevada. This is David Weiss. He is the only gold medalist from the state of Nevada testifying on behalf of the Renewable Portfolio Standard during the hearing. And it was a similar experience with Governor Sisolak, who welcomed us into his office and showed appreciation for the support of our community and the industry for the bill. So it passed. So yes, we are getting some wins and we are getting traction. But the reality of it is this. The reality of it is that there's three things that we need to actually make progress on climate. And we've been talking about one of them throughout the day and for the last 10 years, and it's the technology. We have the technology, we have the technological solutions, and that's what we refer to when we talk about and the financial instruments. We know how carbon pricing would work. We know that solar and wind can actually provide more energy than we need. We know that storage is well on its way. But we're still lacking the political will. And the political will is going to be critical if we want to deploy this within the time that we have. And for that political will to be resilient, we actually need the cultural shift. And that's what I want to talk about in the next 6 minutes. And it's basically, how do we actually get past the needs of the technology? How do we actually get beyond the focus that we have on technology into actually saying, okay, let's look beyond the technological solutions, but those of us that are in advocacy, let's take the gloves off and let's actually start standing for what we believe in on our politics. And let's let our politics actually reflect our values.
Do you believe that the temperature of the Earth is increasing?
I'm not a believer in global warming.
I think it's a big scam for a lot of people to make a lot of money.
So this is what we're doing. We have decided that as an organization, we are going to get the outdoor sports community to stand behind climate change and to bring its values to the ballot box. What we've done over the last few months and what we're working over the next couple of months is for every single battleground in the state, in the country that we see that has a mountain sports community, we have mapped out every single congressional district that has swung by a marginal vote over the last 3 elections. And then we're going to identify those candidates that are pro-climate action and those candidates that are against climate action. And those candidates that are against climate action, we're going to mobilize our community, we're going to mobilize our athletes, our industry, and our members. And we're going to identify where can we reach them. So each one of these maps represents climbing gyms, ski areas, colleges, and universities in each one of these same swing districts. And we're going to get all of our communities, there are 34 million people in the United States who either ski, snowboard, climb, or bike. And we're going to only need a fraction of them. Usually we need about 20,000, 30,000. The 2016 presidential election was lost over 80,000 votes. So our goal is to actually mobilize them across Michigan, North Carolina, Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, New Hampshire, Maine, and Pennsylvania. All areas that have strong membership of the outdoor sports community, and get people to vote. And particularly the younger generation that actually follows a lot of our athletes on Instagram and social media. We have a reach of 17 million people thanks to the reach of our 150 Athlete Alliance members. And we believe that this generation, the next generation, sees this as politically important but not partisan. And that's the group that we need to mobilize and that we're going to be getting out to the polls in 2020. Because ultimately, all of us in this room, those of us that have belonged to the environmental movement for the last 20, 30 years, have done a fantastic job at building the base. But that base has not been enough. We have not had a strong enough voice to actually make these policies not only be passed in the legislature, but actually be culturally resilient. So that when people like this say we're going to pull out of Paris, we should have an uprising across the entire country that says, no, we are not. And that's going to require not only political wins and a sophisticated political strategy in every community of intent, not only the sports community, the faith community, the agricultural community, and all the other communities that are represented here. It's actually going to require a cultural shift that makes values on climate action a value that is so ingrained that it will resist any political sway over the next 20 years. And so to do that, the first step, and what we are trying to mobilize people to do is the first step is to take that very simple action. And it's to get out and vote. But in order to do that, we're trying to make it a little bit more fun than it has been. So we produced that video, and then we partnered with Strava, which is an app that I just found out how to use about 2 months ago. But we did a challenge and actually mobilized 36,000 voters with that piece of content over the course of a week in 2018. And we're planning to basically scale this up in 2020 to mobilize people across all of our target geographies. If you're a runner, if you're a skier, if you're a snowboarder, if you're a climber, if you're a biker, if you're a telemarker, you're one of us. Please join PAL and help us make this, help us just shift this. We need to get the country in a different direction. Thank you.